Love him to bits. A warm welcome back, Greg Murphy. Murph, how are you, mate?
G'day, Marty. Good, mate. Very good.
You're at Phillip Island. What are you doing there? You're racing bikes?
No, mate. No, that would be foolish for me to try and attempt to do that, considering I've spent my life on four wheels. And I'm actually there's an amazing historic meeting on here at Phillip Islands on every year, albeit it hasn't been for the last few years for obvious reasons. And I'm running a 1990 Nissan Motorsport HR31 Nissan Skyline this weekend, Group A car from back in the day, Mark Richard. Yeah.
Oh God, is that Godzilla? Is that one?
No, it's the one before it. So it's only two-wheel drive turbocharged car, not the four-wheel drive R32 Godzilla, but it's going to be spectacular. It's an amazing racetrack. It's just a beautiful, beautiful track. And so getting the chance to drive around here again, I'm amping for it. It's going to go out in about an hour's time, actually.
Okay.
First run.
Oh, I remember that Godzilla in Wellington in 1996, mate. What was that? Just before we get onto the Supercars, so why did everyone hate that car in the Aussie Touring Car Series?
Because it was almost unbeatable.
Right.
So it was the Godzilla R32 was a twin turbocharged six-cylinder engine. It was four-wheel drive. It had a lot of tech. It was a sort of a car that probably really didn't sort of fit within what the rule book should have been, and so it was around for a short time, dominated, and then disappeared, but was banned effectively, I think, from memory. And but it was a huge jump in technology,
okay.
And really nothing else to keep up.
How easy is it to drive 30 years later? I find this stuff fascinating, mate, that you get into a car and it's that old, Yeah, and I've been doing a little bit of that lately, and it's actually the stuff that really gets me excited these days. Not so much some of the newer stuff, but some of the old stuff. There's just some beautiful machines here, and it's analog. We're back to analog, Marty. You know, technology is taking over everywhere in our lives, and I don't believe that much of it's great. And then, you get the chance to go back and drive a car like this, full analog, no traction control, no ABS, really simplistic, really, in its design and its behaviour. And it just makes you feel alive. It really does. They're amazing. H-pattern gearboxes, manual gearboxes. You've got to use the clutch. Wow.
Do all the stuff that takes a lot of skill, and you've got to piece it all together. And there's something just challenging and very special about that, whereas these days, the stuff that we drive and race currently is very high-tech, very fast, very efficient, amazing machines, but it's become, the gaps between the good and the bad, are a lot less because they're much easier to drive than what the old stuff was.
Yeah, look, we're talking to Larko tomorrow. We got him on the program. I love talking to him.
Cool.
Yeah, he's just
awesome.
Absolutely brilliant and just getting there right down to the nuts and bolts of all the, the intricacies and things. But just in terms of the actual driving, mate, I mean, like, and I watched the F1 the other day as well, and it feels like they're actually driving, to me, a PlayStation. They got it's all sort of thumb stuff, and as you say, you're not slamming your gears, and I mean, I don't know. I always sort of question. Is it better? Is it more fun to drive a car that you actually have to wrestle with?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, Larko will do an amazing job at talking about that. And, if you said sort of talk to him about the analog nature of a supercar, that's what it's about. There was a bit of kerfuffle about supercars going to a paddle shift system for the gearbox. And, there was poles put up and all sorts of stuff. And we've ended up with sticking with the gear lever, with a manual gear lever. Yes, it's got a flat shift kind of mechanism in it that you just grab the lever and pull it through with full throttle and stuff. But it's still that additional thing that you've got to do and have timing with, and ensure that you do it all just right at the right time. And it's just not about just pulling a little paddle on the back of the steering wheel. And I think it's really important for supercars. And the fact that we don't have traction control and ABS and some of this tech in those cars, and just keeping them that little bit more raw than some of the other series that are out there. And it's that's what I love about supercars, and maintaining that, and it's maintain that muscle car sort of look and vibe and feel and noise, and that's really cool. People talk about moving into hybrid and all sorts of stuff. I say, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that with our class, because people still love it for what it is. They love it for that raw kind of nature of it.
Yeah.
And
in this world that's changing as much as it is around, the focus on sustainability and all that, and we've obviously got to be smart about that kind of thing, but you can still, just be a little bit, off the line there and and own your own space. And now I think that's what Supercars does really well, and we need to continue to do that.
Oh, look, perfectly explained, absolutely adequately explained, and I'm sure that there'll be, the social engineering brigade will be screaming and flapping and drinking their soy milk chai coriander latte at it. But Greg, you're exactly right. And look, this is, and I get frustrated with a lot of sports like this. Your core audience, Supercars is your core audience. You don't need to crap on that core audience. They love what they love, and whether the new generation likes it or not, mate. Have you ever had a chance to take, say, like what Brocky drove in the 70s or those guys? Have you ever had a chance to take some of those cars around the track, and what do they like to drive in their purest form?
Yeah, I have not a huge amount of that stuff, but again, in their purest form, you look back and they were the true heroes, right? They were the true heroes. And, the words heroes and legends gets thrown around way too much, in my opinion. It's a label that is just way too widely used. We should save it for really the true icons of our times and our sports and whatever else. And they were, when you look at what they were doing in those vehicles back in the 60s and 70s and how simple they were, and in many cases, quite dangerous in some respects, right? Compared to what we have now. Today we're just over the top. Everything is just so over the top in this whole health and safety thing. It's just ridiculous. If you make a decision to go to a racetrack and drive whatever you want, that's your choice. On indemnity, whatever happens, that's your problem. Someone else shouldn't be in charge of determining or making that decision for you. And that's the way I'm a big believer in all that. And there's a lot of cars here this weekend at Phillip Island that fit that bill, and people are still going to get in and drive them because they are just so iconic and special for what they represented back in the day. The stuff these days, very digital, just over the top, and in many cases, in my mind, for safety, with the focus. It's one of the safest things you can do in the world is drive a race car or go to a race circuit, because we are so protected. We've got this belief that what we do is dangerous. It's not. It's not dangerous. The amount of people that get injured and hurt racing cars is a tiny. You go to ACC and ask them what the biggest amount of money they spend on in sport. Motorsport doesn't even exist on the list of claims. No. It doesn't even exist. It's non-existent. Rugby, on the other hand, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So and the participation in motorsport in New Zealand is enormous. The amount of people that participate and go to a racetrack and drive is huge, absolutely huge. But when something goes wrong, which is very few and far between, the world stops and there needs to be an investigation. Oh my God, motor racing is so dangerous. Well, it's not. It's absolutely one of the most safest things you can do.
Are the drivers better these days? Greg, I love it, mate. The drivers better. I know you can't compare era with era, but it's just your gut feel that the drivers are better. I mean, the cars are a hell of a lot better and maybe easier to drive. But are the drivers better? Like, can you actually genuinely look at a guy like SVG or Scott McLaughlin when he was in Supercars and compare them with those early races?
No, I don't actually think you can, because the skill set and what you've been moulded into doing is very different. The efficiency of a current driver is so much more than what it was, say, when I began, or we're talking the Brocks and the Johnsons and then we go back to the Holmes and the Amons and the McLarens. I mean, they were just, for how fast they drove those cars. And I can tell you that some of those cars were as fast as a lot of the cars that we race these days, if not faster. But their skill set was very different. And these days we're so much more refined because we've got so much information and data and technology that supports improvement, whereas back then they didn't. It was just going and driving the car and going, hey, and learning through just driving the car. So there was probably always things that were, could have been better. But so now we're just overloaded with all these things that continuously allow us to improve. And so, brilliant race car drivers back then driving those cars, brilliant race car drivers now. It's very hard to explain because of that shift and those changes and evolution through the decades. But when you look at what the drivers are doing these days in these machines, they are finding the absolute last tiny split second because of all the tools they've got. Whereas back in the day, there was probably a bigger window of operation.
You know, I don't ever lament the past and go, oh, I wish it was like that. I do look back fondly at it and go, oh, I'm so glad I'm old enough to have actually borne witness to it and been a part of it. And to me, there's something gorgeous about the fact that you have to rely on your best mechanic working overnight to find something to tweak in that car, as opposed to it just plugs into a bloody computer system and some algorithm's going to tell. I mean, I love the human side of it. That's why you got into racing, Greg, wasn't it?
Yes. Oh, completely. I mean, the human side and just being one with the machine and that whole feel and vibe and you know, pushing the limit, pushing the envelope and searching and making mistakes and learning. I mean, the thrill and the buzz that I got, you know, way back in the day of being in control of a little machine trying to go faster around a racetrack is what you know, continued to drive me to keep doing it. And you know, and that's why drivers are still doing it now. It's just it's become I think probably more fashionable. There's a lot of money being invested in it into young drivers because motorsport and F1 and all that kind of stuff, the dreams of being a superstar and making some money is now a big catalyst, whereas, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was a different story.
Who beats Shane van Gisbergen this year? Let's talk about some of this, because we're going to talk about a lot of it with Larko tomorrow, but who beats him? Who can?
Well, if anyone is going to, the time is now ripe to do it, because, you know, everyone is starting on a very level playing field in a car that is as controlled, or is the most controlled supercar we've ever had. So the limitations on teams that we've had, you know, now is more than we've ever had before. There's no ability for them to go and build their own parts, develop their own parts and ideas and philosophies, and do development on certain areas. They've really got to do it through gathering information and finding out a way to just find that little advantage, like only using the same things that everyone else has got. So the time is right for someone to actually be able to showcase their skill and not have the vehicle as an excuse as to why they can't beat him. But on the other hand, that also works for Shane, because his skill set and his ability, you know, he's the top, he's the benchmark in the field. So if you can't find a way to do it with your own skill, well then, you know, it's going to be a big challenge for everybody. But there's some talent out there, mate. There's some super talent. And this year they're going to be, you know, working hard and under pressure to try and, you know, take that mantle away from Shane. But, you know, good luck to them, because it ain't going to be easy.
I'm going to talk to Larko about the Downforce and the fact that they're taking off, I can't remember what, but it's about 200 or 300 kilos or so. The figure's just, it's mind-blowing, mate. I mean, what does it mean driving a car that they're going to take that Downforce off? Surely it means that you're going to be a bit more, I suppose, wary of your safety, your travelling distance, your speed and all of that kind of stuff. But I've been reassured that no, they'll still be going as fast without that Downforce.
Yeah. Listen, I think we hopefully will see a high degradation from the beginning of a race or the beginning of a stint to the end of a stint because of that less Downforce. I think potentially you're going to have to be very smart, calculated on how you look after the car and look after the tyre particularly. But hopefully the whole idea of this is obviously to get the cars to run closer together, race a lot closer, so therefore the passing and the racing is exaggerated, which I can't wait for, and I believe it will happen. So, you know, the cars are lighter. They've got as much horsepower as the previous car. They're going to be more efficient in some areas, so the performance outright in that time is going to be quite similar, quite close. But we might see that during a race, because of that the less downforce that they do carry, which pushes the car onto the ground and works the tyre better. It might mean that they become a little bit light on their feet and therefore, you know, start to burn up and use that tyre a bit more, which is great. That's fine. That as a spectacle for the spectator, that's exactly what we want. We want the cars to become harder as the stints go on, and it comes down to management and skill by the driver to manage that. You know, we've had it a little bit too good for a little bit long now. The car, I drove Bathurst last year, right at the end of the development cycle of the previous generation car, and I just couldn't believe how stable and how good they were to drive.
Wow.
Such a vast difference to what I last raced at Bathurst. You know, it was 8 years, and the development cycle and how much different the cars were to drive and how good they felt in the high-speed places was just outrageous. It was hard to fathom. And, you know, for me to turn back after 8 years and actually not be off the back of the field and slow, that says something about where the car's got to. So, we need the change. We need to set the everything back to zero and have these teams and drivers, on a level playing field where hopefully the driving skill will be the bit that we actually watch and care about.
Oh, fantastic talking to you, mate. God, I could sit here and rave with you for hours and hours about this. I just want one final thing, though. When you're driving Bathurst, and just that bit where you're coming over the hill, and there's a bit where you basically go into air, you can't see the track, right? You're looking at the sky, and you're hoping that you get your line right, and you're left.
Skyline.
Yeah. What is that? I mean, that just must be the nuts, mate, to drive that.
Yep. It is. It's insane, and I can honestly tell you, Marty, having that opportunity last year, which I never thought I was going to get and wasn't actually keen on doing when it was suggested, the opportunity to go back there last year and drive again, and actually, because in 2014, my last Bathurst wasn't a great memory. Myself and James Courtney were a couple of laps down at the end. We had problems all day, and it was just a bit of a miserable end to my tenure at the mountain. To go back there 8 years later and actually have a run through there and actually enjoy it and was phenomenal. I remember the last couple of laps of my last stint last October. I actually took the time, because I knew it wasn't going to happen again. I took the time to actually reflect and actually take in what I was actually doing at that moment. And across the top of the mountain with all those people there, mate, and arriving at Skyline, all that stuff, I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity for all the years I did, but I'm very thankful for Peter Addison, the guys from Boost and Erebus who allowed me to drive a car there again and actually take that in and reflect. I really did reflect on it and how incredible it was. So, absolutely. And that doesn't happen. We don't have enough fun doing it. We don't have enough fun because it's too professional and too much money involved. So I actually enjoyed it for the right reasons. One quick
question. Chris has just texted in. He said, Martin, a question for Greg. Which would win, Godzilla or the PDL Mustang?
Unfortunately, I think Godzilla would win on that battle. A little bit too much time in between ideas on that one, and twin turbocharged four-wheel drive Nissan was probably going to be the good on that little bit. Yeah.
Oh, magic talking to you, mate. So cool of you to give us so much time. Thank you, Murph.
My pleasure, Marty. Thanks for the call.
All right, Greg Murphy with us, who's at Phillip Island with the Supercars. Get underway.